It ain't the left side or the right side, then it must be the FinSide. It ain't the left side.
Thank you, Solo D. Welcome to another episode of On the FinSide here with Kat and Paul. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and on Spotify. Check out our merch store on thefinside.threadless.com. NFL draft season is here, and we are starting our position-by-position previews. We're going to breeze through a couple of these, like running back, wide receiver, and tight end. But a lot of other positions, let's face it, the Dolphins have a lot of needs this year, and quarterback, without question, is one of them. The main question is, are they going to possibly stay pat at 13 and take a player like a Drew Locke or a Daniel Jones? We hope not. Or are they going to think about jumping up in the draft and taking a look at Dwayne Haskins with Kyler Murray expected to be off the board and going number 1 to the Arizona Cardinals at the time we're recording this show? So we'll go down the list. I'll give my top 10 quarterbacks in the entire draft, and there is a lot of depth there in the middle round. So starting out, Paul, as of the most recent reports by everybody, looks like Kyler Murray is going to be the number 1 pick in the draft. And it seems like a lot of other teams in the NFL are starting to fill those quarterback spots. So it's not out of the realm of possibility right now that Dwayne Haskins falls to number 13. It's very unlikely, but not impossible at this time. And I start to get the feeling, too, is it impossible that the Dolphins start to look to trade up and just resolve the quarterback position this year?
It's highly possible. I mean, I think if you see Haskins fall into that 9 or 10 range, Miami might make a move to go after him. If Kyler Murray, for some reason, does slide past the Cardinals and slides down to that 9 or 10 range, or maybe even around 6 or 7, I could see Miami making a move to go up after him. I know we talked about this in our draft show, or our mock draft show. Miami's got a lot of ammunition from next year that they can draw from if they have to. Do I want to see Miami sacrifice a lot of picks? No, but I think they've also got the opportunity to reaccumulate those picks. We saw how fast they've added draft picks this offseason. They've got the ability to do a lot of special things in this draft. So if Haskins or Murray fall, absolutely go up and get them.
Yeah, like you said, if Murray falls to pick 6 or 7, then that could be a possibility. In fact, I think they're going to be really trying to move up to get him. At this point, like we've talked about, it looks like he's going to go number 1, and it seems like a combination of a couple of things. I mean, we're at a point now where the height doesn't matter as much with NFL quarterbacks. Baker Mayfield was 6 foot last year. Also came out of Oklahoma, too. Russell Wilson's been obviously one of the best quarterbacks in the league, has the most touchdowns over the last 2 years. And so when you look at that, when you take into account everything, it looks like he's going to be Cliff Kingsbury's guy. He's the number 1 quarterback on my board. I mean, when you look at it and you see the numbers he put up last year, 50 passing touchdowns, over 1,000 yards rushing, and 42 touchdowns last year and over 1,000 yards rushing, and over 4,300 yards passing too. Just an incredible year. Won the Heisman Trophy, very, very well deserved, and he looks like he is going to go number 1. Dwayne Haskins is my number 2 quarterback by a very wide margin too. What I like about him too is that even though he's not the greatest at sensing pressure at this time, he's such a hard worker, and the IQ level seems so high at this point. It doesn't seem like he makes the same mistake back to back. So I see him being somebody who, as long as he can avoid pressure long enough to get the ball out quickly, then I see the arm strength and being able to carry him. I like his touch. I like his anticipation. I do see him, and I do see him ending up going well before the Dolphins, and the Dolphins addressing the quarterback position in 2021. Third and fourth for me are going to be, just like a lot of other people, Drew Locke and Daniel Jones. Drew Locke, I'm a Mizzou fan. I've seen every pass this guy has made. He has a lot of arm, but right now his feet and his anticipation right now are not there. He needs to go to a team that's going to let him sit on the bench for a year, Paul, and let him season a little bit, because I think if the Dolphins do end up taking him at 13, which I don't anticipate, it's not a place for a rebuilding team.
No, and he's not a quarterback that you want to see behind a line that's going to be young and learning. He's not, to me, athletic enough. And on top of that, watching the tape of him, he has a lot of passes where you're like, who the hell was he even throwing to? And that's within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. Miami's got an offense that's going to be built around a lot of quick hits, but also a little bit of over the top that's developed off of those quick hits. They've got the personnel for that, and he's just not a fit. And on top of that, like you said, you're a Mizzou fan. I kind of know and trust you. I have no problem going against you on things if they fall that way or what have you, but I'd go so far as to say Drew Locke needs to sit for 2 or 3 years before he's ready to be an NFL starter. And that's not a position that Miami's in at this point, to wait for a guy for 2 or 3 years. They don't have Fitzpatrick that long. No.
Yeah, I mean, if he stepped into a Pat Mahomes-like situation with Kansas City where you have a really good coach that's very skilled in developing quarterbacks like Andy Reid was, and you have Alex Smith ahead of you, and you've got these skill positions around you, and you've got the offensive line, I think Drew Locke could step in maybe even his first year, very least his second year, and do it. But I don't want that place to be Miami. And if you get Drew Locke in here and he predictably struggles, I don't really see the point, because you're going to want to draft, a quarterback like Tua or Jake Fromm or any of his quarterbacks next year. And then I'm going to start saying, well, what's the point of that the previous year? You could have drafted a position that helps this 2020 quarterback. So he is my number 3 quarterback, despite all that I've seen. Me personally, I would have more of a mid-second round grade on him, but he's going to get pushed up the board. It wouldn't surprise me if he ends up going in the top 10 or 11 picks, and I think he will be gone by the time the Dolphins pick at 13. Number 4 on my board is, and it's pretty logjam for me between the 4th quarterback and maybe all the way down to the end of the list here at 10, because I'm not all that high on Daniel Jones out of Duke. I mean, there are whispers, Paul, that the Giants very well may take him at number 17 with the pick that they took or that they got from Odell Beckham. I can tell you this, in any scenario, if Daniel Jones ended up going number 13 to the Dolphins, my remote is going through the TV. It's going up. I may just cancel the entire day at that point.
Yeah, I'm going to tell our listeners everything that they need to know about the idea of drafting Daniel Jones 13th overall. No. Round 2, pick 16? No. I just do not want him in Miami. And it's funny you mentioned the Giants, because while we're sitting here talking about Drew Locke, all I could think was, I could see the Giants falling in love with Drew Locke to be the Eli replacement at number 7 overall. So I wouldn't be shocked to see one of these first 2 picks for the Giants be that. Or to see the Giants make a move up the board to go after Haskins or Murray. They're the ones that are going to keep Miami from getting Haskins or Murray at this point.
Yeah, and like you said, at number 6 there, it's not out of the realm of possibilities with how quarterbacks get pushed up. In fact, Peter Schrager from, I believe, NFL.com had him mocked 6 to the Giants. So it's not out of the realm of possibility there. I think I don't think the Giants can get out of this first round without having a quarterback in some way. But I think Daniel Jones is the wrong way to go. But with all this talk, too, I mean, stranger things happen with quarterbacks. I mean, just last year, Mason Rudolph was projected by some people to go mid-first round to the Baltimore Ravens, and he ends up falling late to the 3rd round. Davis Webb a couple of years ago out of California Davis was kind of that same way. So if Mason Rudolph can fall late to the 3rd round, Daniel Jones can too. So he's going to be one of the real enigmas of this draft. So I do have him barely as the 4th quarterback on my list here. Number 5 is Ryan Finley out of NC State for me. 6'4", 210. He's a transfer from Boise State. And nothing about him really jumps off the page, and he's going to be an older rookie. He's going to be 25 years old. but he's somebody I think gets the ball out very well. He spreads it around, more that cerebral type of player. And if the Dolphins can end up looking at him, say in that fourth round area, and he comes in, he gets a chance at some point with Ryan Fitzpatrick as your starting quarterback to play. I could see him, the Dolphins looking at him and saying, you know what, this is somebody that maybe we can win a few games with over the next 3 or 4 years. He's not going to be our starter, but he could end up being that backup type where you can still put him in and win if that's the case. Number 6 is going to be a player that, Paul, I know you and I like a lot. We covered this in our mock draft section. Easton Stick out of North Dakota State. Over the last 2 years, 46 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. I really do like his mobility. He's not the biggest guy. He doesn't have the strongest arm. But in terms of his mobility and just pure mechanics and spinning the ball, I think this guy brings a lot to the table, and it's kind of unpredictable where he's going to go between round, 3 or 4 and 6 or 7.
No, and he could even go undrafted like we talked about as well. I mean, it's that big of an enigma with him. And the thing I like with Stick, given his athleticism, given the way that Miami's built offensively at this point in time and the personnel that they have, Albert Wilson, Jakeem Grant, Kenny Stills, he is a very good fit for that quick hit offense that goes over the top on occasion once they've lured you in. And that is what Miami has built up for. So Easton Stick's almost the better fit for this offense than the 3 guys you've got listed above him.
Yeah. Let's move on to the 7th guy here, Jarrett Stidham out of Auburn. He is somebody that I thought at this point in the process would be considered a first or a second-round draft pick, but he's not. He had a pretty bad year last year. He's a transfer from Baylor in 2015, but I do think height and arm, in terms of that, he brings a lot to the table. I think there's some developmental skills on there, and he could possibly be a very good player there in the 4th or 5th round. I just don't see the stability that I see with a Ryan Finley. That's why I've got him listed a little bit lower. Number 8 is somebody, if you watch any football on Saturday, you know very well, and that's Will Grier out of West Virginia. I mean, his numbers are very, very good. I mean, 34 touchdowns in 2017, 37 touchdowns in 2018 for a West Virginia team. That's all a lot of very good competition. He went to the Combine, and it wasn't very good news for him. He tried to really overcompensate for that arm strength, and it just did not work out for him. He's never going to be somebody who just rocks back and throws the ball 50 yards. What you're hoping to get is kind of those X-factor type of plays and type of games where you can get a very clutch player. But that doesn't mean that he's going to go anywhere higher for me than the 4th round. But you never know where some of these quarterbacks can go. Number 9 is one of the more interesting guys in this class, and that's Tyree Jackson from the University of Buffalo. I mean, you want to talk about somebody who's all developmental tools, you're going to be foaming at the mouth for this guy. 6'7", 250 pounds. When he was in high school, he took a very bad high school team to, I believe it was a state championship. Don't quote me on that, but he elevated his high school team. He took a Buffalo program that not a lot of people have heard of. He elevated them too, and then he goes to the Combine and he interviews well. He performs well. So think of him as kind of a miniature version of, a poor man's version of Cam Newton. He does bring those skills to the table. Finally, number 10, Gardner Minshew from Washington State. He's a transfer from East Carolina. He got hooked up with Mike Leach in that air raid type of offense this past year at Washington State, put up just crazy numbers, put up almost 4,800 yards passing, 38 touchdowns, just 9 interceptions. He kind of has that cerebral backup type of look to him. I could see the Dolphins taking a look at him there in rounds 5 through 7. Paul, anything on this list here, the 1 through 10, anything jump out for you?
You know, I actually thought you were going to let Minshew slide off your list, and I was going to slip in here and mention his name again like I did earlier this offseason, because I do like the tremendous upside of him. And the big thing I'd say, too, is I like a lot of the late guys in your list. a lot more than I do the 3 through 5 guys. It's the 3 through 5 guys don't strike me as somebody that's going to come in and be special for Miami, and don't seem to have the potential upside that we see through some of the late guys on your list, like Minshew, like Tyree Jackson, like Easton Stick and Will Greer. Those are guys that have that tremendous upside, and I think I mentioned this to you off the air. I'd rather see Miami at this point double down on 2 of these guys in the late rounds and see what shakes out of the mix than I would see Miami blow an early round pick on a Drew Locke or a Daniel Jones. That just speaks horrific volumes to me, going after either of them when I don't see them being anything special as a starter, at least not in the immediate future. So I'd rather see the tremendous upside and potential from some of these late round guys that I think could surprise a few people.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, if you're coming away with Drew Locke in the first round or Daniel Jones in the first round, that's not value to me. And if you're drafting any of these players, any of these quarterbacks listed 5 through 10, the Ryan Finleys and the Will Greers and the Easton Sticks, then I don't think the value's there in the second or third round. But if you double down with a 5th round pick and one of the 7th round picks, then you may end up coming away with a Ryan Finley and an Easton Stick anyway. So the more bullets you have in the chamber, the more opportunities you have at the quarterback position. It's looking more and more like the Dolphins are either going to trade up for Dwayne Haskins, which I don't think is going to happen, but it's a possibility, or their quarterback's going to be taken in the 2020 or 2021 draft. You were listening to On the FinSide and our breakdown of our first position here in the NFL draft season, the quarterback position, the one everybody wants to talk about. Tell us what you think. Leave some comments in our YouTube section and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and on Spotify. Check out our merch store on thefinside.threadless.com. And if it's not on the right side and it's not on the left side, it is on the FinSide. Solo D, take us home.
It ain't the left side or the right side, then it must be the FinSide. It ain't the left side or the right side, then it must be the FinSide. Listen, Dolphins fans across the land all tuning in to see what Brian Cat and Paul about to